You feel everything she does. Every mood shift hits you like a physical blow. Every tear she sheds becomes your emergency to solve. And despite all this emotional labor and understanding, you are still losing her to men who barely seem to care at all. This is the brutal reality facing empathic men in modern relationships. Your greatest strength has become your most devastating weakness, and nobody taught you how to fix it. Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who understood power and human nature better than almost anyone, had insights that can transform your empathic curse into unstoppable relationship strength. What you are about to discover will completely change how you see your sensitivity, your relationships, and your potential for creating the love life you actually deserve rather than the one you have been settling for. You feel everything. Every slight rejection cuts deep. Every harsh word from her echoes in your mind for days. Every emotional shift in the room hits you like a physical blow. This is the curse of the empathic man. In a world that rewards emotional detachment and strategic thinking, Nietzsche understood this brutal reality. He saw how those who feel too much become prisoners of their own sensitivity, trapped in cycles of overthinking and emotional reactivity that destroy their power in relationships. The modern dating landscape is a battlefield where empathy becomes a liability. Women are drawn to men who can remain unmoved by emotional storms, who can stand firm when others crumble under pressure. Your ability to understand her pain becomes the very thing that makes you unattractive. You absorb her emotions and lose yourself in the process. You become a mirror reflecting her chaos instead of a rock she can depend on. This is why the bad boys win while you analyze every text message. They remain untouchable while you drown. In Feelings. Society has sold you the lie that sensitivity equals strength, that understanding others deeply makes you a better man, that your empathy is a gift to be celebrated. But Nietzsche would tell you this is slave morality, a way to make the weak feel virtuous about their weakness, a comfort blanket for those too afraid to embrace their power. The brutal truth is that in relationships, your empathy without boundaries becomes emotional slavery. Your understanding without limits becomes self-destruction. Your care without conditions becomes the path to being used and discarded. Nietzsche spoke of the will to power as the fundamental drive of all life, the urge to grow, to expand, to dominate, and create. But as an empathic man, you have traded this primal force for something weaker, the need to please, the desperate hunger for approval that kills your natural dominance. You feel her discomfort and immediately rush to fix it. You sense tension and sacrifice your position to restore harmony. You mistake submission for compassion. This is where you lose the game before it even begins. Women are hardwired to seek strength, to test boundaries, to find a man who cannot be moved by their emotional storms. But your empathy makes you reactive. Every tear becomes your emergency. Every mood swing becomes your responsibility. Every conflict becomes a reason to bend and break. You think you are being caring, but you are actually being weak. You believe you are showing love, but you are displaying fear. The will to power demands that you hold your ground, that you create your own reality, instead of constantly adapting to hers. Nietzsche would say you must learn to say no without guilt, to pursue your goals without constant consideration of others' feelings, to be unmoved by emotional manipulation. Your empathy should serve your strength, not replace it. It should inform your decisions, not control them. It should be a tool you wield, not a chain that binds you. Nietzsche shattered the illusion of absolute morality with his concept of beyond good and evil. He showed that moral categories are human constructions that often serve to weaken rather than strengthen. As an empathic man, you have been programmed to think in terms of right and wrong, good and bad, moral and immoral in every relationship situation. This moral framework becomes your prison, trapping you in patterns that destroy your happiness and power. You stay with toxic women because leaving feels morally wrong. You tolerate disrespect because fighting back seems cruel. You sacrifice your needs because prioritizing yourself feels selfish. Your empathy combines with this moral thinking to create a perfect storm of self-destruction. You feel her pain and then judge yourself harshly for any action that might cause more pain. This is not nobility. This is cowardice disguised as virtue. Weakness masquerading as righteousness. Nietzsche would tell you to create your own values, to decide what serves your growth and what destroys it, to move beyond the slave morality that keeps you trapped in dysfunction. A healthy relationship requires you to act from strength, not from moral obligation. To choose based on what creates mutual growth, not what appears virtuous to others. Your empathy should guide you toward people who deserve it, not chain you. To those who exploit it, it should help you recognize genuine connection, not trap you in toxic patterns disguised as love. Nietzsche identified two fundamental moral systems, master morality and slave morality, and this distinction reveals why empathic men struggle so deeply in modern relationships. Master morality creates values from strength. It decides what is good based on what enhances life and power. It operates from abundance and self-determination. Slave morality, on the other hand, emerges from weakness. It defines good as the opposite of what the strong do. It celebrates suffering and self-sacrifice as virtues. As an empathic man, you have unknowingly adopted slave morality in your relationships. You believe that understanding her at your own expense makes you good, that sacrificing your needs for hers proves your worth, that enduring emotional abuse shows your strength. This mindset turns you into the perfect victim. You actually feel proud of your ability to tolerate what should be intolerable. You mistake your capacity for suffering as evidence of your superior character. Meanwhile, she operates from master morality, whether she realizes it or not. She takes what she can get, she respects only what challenges her, she loses attraction to anything that submits to Ellie. Your empathy without boundaries becomes her invitation to dominance. Your understanding without limits becomes her license to exploit. Your forgiveness without consequences becomes her permission to repeat harmful patterns. Nietzsche would say you must reclaim your master morality, create your own standards, demand reciprocity, refuse to celebrate your own victimization as some twisted form of virtue. Amor fati, love your fate. This was Nietzsche's ultimate teaching for those who suffer deeply and feel intensely. As an empathic man, you have spent years cursing your sensitivity, wishing you could be cold and detached like other men, fighting against the very nature that makes you who you are. This internal war against yourself creates more suffering than any external rejection or heartbreak ever could. You become your own worst enemy in the battle. For emotional strength, Nietzsche teaches that true power comes not from changing what you cannot change, but from embracing it so completely that it becomes your greatest asset. Your empathy is not a bug in your system. It is a feature that can be refined and directed. Your sensitivity is not weakness. It is raw material for extraordinary emotional intelligence. Your ability to feel deeply is not a curse. It is potential power waiting to be channeled correctly. The path forward requires you to stop apologizing for who you are and start leveraging what you have. To love your empathic nature while building boundaries around it. To embrace your emotional depth while refusing to drown in it. When you truly accept your fate as an empathic man, you stop wasting energy fighting yourself and start investing that energy in becoming stronger. You transform from a victim of your own nature into a master of it. You turn your greatest perceived weakness into your most potent tool for creating authentic and powerful relationships. Nietzsche envisioned the Übermensch, the overman who creates his own values and lives beyond the limitations of conventional morality and social expectations. For the empathic man, this concept becomes crucial because your natural tendency is to absorb the values, emotions, and expectations of everyone around you, losing yourself in the process. You become a chameleon, constantly shifting to match what others want, never standing firm in your own convictions or desires. The empathic Übermensch learns to feel without being controlled by feelings, to understand without being consumed by understanding, to care without losing himself in that care. You must create your own relationship standards instead of accepting whatever treatment comes your way. You must define your own worth instead of letting others determine your value. You must establish your own emotional boundaries instead of having none at all. This is not about becoming cold or heartless. This is about becoming sovereign over your own inner world. Most empathic men live as emotional slaves, reactive to every mood shift around them, desperate for approval from people who do not even respect them. The Übermensch empathic man chooses when to engage his empathy and when to withdraw it. He decides which relationships deserve his emotional investment and which do not. He creates his own moral code based on what enhances his life rather than what pleases others. This transformation from emotional slave to emotional sovereign is the most important journey you will ever take. Nietzsche proposed one of the most powerful thought experiments in philosophy, the eternal recurrence. The idea that you must live your exact same life infinite times with every joy and every suffering, repeated endlessly. This concept becomes a brutal mirror for empathic men trapped in toxic relationship patterns, forcing you to confront whether the pain you endure is truly worth it or just familiar comfort disguised as love. Ask yourself this question about your current or past relationships. If you had to relive every moment of emotional abuse, every instance of being taken for granted, every time you sacrificed your needs only to be discarded, would you choose it again? If you had to experience the same cycles of hope and disappointment, the same patterns of giving everything and receiving crumbs, the same feelings of being used and undervalued forever, would this life be worth living? Most empathic men fail this test because they have confused intensity with value, drama with depth, suffering with meaning. You tell yourself that the pain proves how much you care, that the struggle makes it more real, that enduring abuse demonstrates your capacity for love. But Nietzsche would challenge you to demand a life so fulfilling that you would gladly live it forever. Relationships so nourishing that eternal repetition sounds like paradise rather than hell. The eternal recurrence test reveals which relationships enhance your existence and which ones slowly destroy it. Use this wisdom to choose better. Nietzsche warned against the herd mentality, the tendency of masses to think and act collectively without individual reflection or courage. For empathic men, this herd mentality becomes particularly dangerous because society uses your natural sensitivity to enforce conformity and suppress your individual power. You are told that real men should always be understanding, that good men never prioritize themselves, that strong men absorb endless emotional labor without complaint. This social programming turns your empathy into a weapon against your own interests. You feel guilty for setting boundaries because the herd calls it selfish. You apologize for having needs because the collective labels it toxic masculinity. You sacrifice your goals because society rewards men who put everyone else first. The herd wants empathic men to be emotional servants, always available, always accommodating, always willing to minimize themselves for the comfort of others. Breaking free from herd mentality requires you to think independently about what actually serves your growth and happiness, to ignore social pressure that keeps you weak and compliant, to recognize that most relationship advice is designed to make you a better servant rather than a stronger man. Nietzsche understood that true strength comes from standing apart from the crowd, from creating your own path rather than following the well-worn trail of collective thinking. Your empathy should serve your individual development, not the expectations of a society that benefits from keeping you small, confused, and perpetually focused on everyone except yourself. Nietzsche's famous command to become who you are represents the ultimate challenge for empathic men who have spent their lives becoming what others needed them to be. You have molded yourself into the perfect boyfriend, the understanding friend, the emotional support system. But somewhere in all that adaptation, you lost track of your authentic self. You became so skilled at reading and responding to others that you forgot how to listen to your own inner voice. The journey to becoming who you are requires you to strip away all the false identities you have constructed to please others, to remove the masks you wear to gain approval, to silence the voices that tell you who you should be and reconnect with who you actually are. This process is painful because it means disappointing people who have grown comfortable with your self-sacrifice. It means setting boundaries with those who have benefited from your lack of them. It means choosing your own path even when others call you selfish. Most empathic men are terrified of this authentic self-creation because they have confused their worth with their usefulness to others. They believe that without constantly serving and pleasing, they have no value. But Nietzsche teaches that your greatest gift to the world is not your ability to disappear into what others need. It is your courage to become fully and unapologetically yourself. Only when you know who you are can you choose relationships that honor rather than exploit your empathic nature. Nietzsche spoke of the transvaluation of values, the complete reversal and reconstruction of what we consider valuable and worthwhile. For empathic men, this concept represents the ultimate transformation, taking everything you have been taught to see as weakness and reconstructing it as strength. Your sensitivity becomes precision, emotional intelligence. Your understanding becomes strategic relationship awareness. Your depth becomes magnetic authenticity that draws the right people while repelling the wrong ones. The transvaluation begins. When you stop apologizing for your empathic nature and start weaponizing it, when you realize that feeling deeply gives you access to information that shallow men never receive, when you understand that your emotional awareness can become your greatest competitive advantage in relationships and life. But this transformation requires you to combine your natural gifts with boundaries, discipline, and strategic thinking. Your empathy must serve your strength rather than replace it. Most empathic men never complete this transvaluation because they remain trapped in the old value system that sees sensitivity as weakness. They continue to judge themselves by standards that were designed to diminish rather than enhance their power. But when you successfully transform your values, you become unstoppable. You attract people who appreciate rather than exploit your nature. You create relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. This is not about becoming someone else. This is about becoming the strongest version of who you already are, turning your perceived curse into your greatest blessing. Through conscious choice and relentless self-development, the empathic man's journey through Nietzsche's philosophy reveals a brutal, your lack of boundaries around it is when you learn to harness your empathic nature with the strength of will to power, the clarity of beyond good and evil thinking, and the courage of authentic self-creation. You become a force that cannot be ignored or exploited. The question that will determine your future is this: will you continue to use your empathy as an excuse for weakness, or will you transform it into the foundation of unshakable strength? Subscribe to this channel if you are ready to stop being the nice guy who finishes last and start being the empathic man who wins by playing an entirely different game